20 years ago to the day, my now wife, back then girlfriend, and I purchased our very first home in the province of Ontario. It was a sweet little story and a half built in the early 1950s, a post-war home, story and a half, only 2 bedrooms upstairs. It was actually sold to us as a 3 bedroom, but the main level bedroom, which probably was a bedroom back in the 1950s, was more like a dining room to us. Anyway, we bought this home 20 years ago in 2003 for a whopping, are you ready?
$146,900.
I know. How did we do this? At the time, I had just finished my 3-month probationary period as a first-year apprentice. I was green off the streets. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I passed my probationary period. And at the time, I believe I was making $9 an hour, but my wife seems to think I was put up to $11 an hour at that time. But I'm going to say $11 an hour. Now, minimum wage back there was in the high $6 range. I believe it was $6.85 an hour. So I was making substantially more than minimum wage, but I actually started at $9 an hour and they put me up to 11. And I believe, we think, I qualified on that mortgage based on the $11. I don't know, it's a little murky. We're going to use the $11 an hour as the base for my income. Now, I was guaranteed 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. We didn't factor in any overtime, obviously, so 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. So based on $11 an hour, that comes out to $22,880. So that's what we're going to use for my income. Now, my wife was making about $24,000 a year as a base salary as an office administrator, just a basic entry-level office admin job. So she was making about $24,000 a year back then. So if you add those two totals up, you get a household income of just shy of $47,000. So the household was making $47,000 a year in 2003. Now, I went and pulled title on this property that we bought back in 2003, and I pulled the mortgage registration charge for back then on our first mortgage. And here are the details of that mortgage. We had a loan amount of $143,403.93. It was at an interest rate of 4.35%, and our weekly payments were $195.45. Now, this would have been a CMHC-backed mortgage. We had put a very minimum down payment down, likely only 5% down. And that's why our mortgage amount was $143,403. Now, if I take minimum wage today in Ontario, which is at $16.55 an hour, and I put about a 30% premium on top of that, that's generally what I was looking at back in 2003 for what I was making. So if we take that $16.55 minimum wage today in Ontario, jack it up, you're looking at roughly a $22 an hour income for a first-year apprentice. And I've kind of cross-referenced this with some job-seeking websites to look at the comparisons today. So fresh off the street, no experience or very little experience, maybe we're looking at around $22 an hour for a entry-level apprentice, first-year apprentice job. So we'll use $22 an hour for myself today if we're to buy that same home today. Now, that would roughly equate to $46,000 a year. Now, my wife today, if she was taking an entry-level office administrative job, she'd be looking at a base salary of around $28 an hour. So comparable in a base salary, that's around $60,000 a year. So overall, today, if we're to be looking for our first home, our first detached home, with a entry-level income today, we'd be looking at a household income of $106,000. Now, the housing market is a little different these days. If you look at an entry-level home, a detached home in Guelph, Ontario today, what we can find is something in and around the $500,000 mark. Now, much like the home we bought in 2003, these homes today need a lot of work at $500,000. They're outdated, they need to be renovated a little, but much like back in 2003, we didn't care. We were just so happy to get a home. So we'll use these examples at this price point of $500,000. So based on those numbers today of $500,000 detached home in Guelph, Ontario, and a family household income of around $106,000 a year, yeah, we wouldn't be able to qualify for that home. Let's run through that math.
Now, these houses cost $500,000. That's the purchase price. Minimum down payment or 5% down payment is $25,000. You're going to need about 1.5% of the purchase price for the closing costs. So that works out to be $7,500. The net loan amount is $475,000. That's the $500,000 minus the down payment, leaves you with $475,000. Here's the thing. There's a thing called default insurance. You're going to need to have that incorporated into the loan if you have less than 5% down. That's going to be $19,000. That is something that's issued by CMHC or Sagen or Canada Guarantee. Canada has 3 default insurers. So that $19,000 actually gets tacked back into the loan. So now you're looking at a total loan amount of $494,000. That is your total mortgage amount. Now, if you go into my mortgage app and you click on the Start New Pre-Qualification, you're going to get started here. It's going to ask you where you plan on buying. I'm going to enter Guelph, Ontario. Next, it's going to say, are you a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident? Yes, I am. Are you a first-time homebuyer? Why, yes, I am. Are you buying a house or a condo? I'm buying a detached home. How do you plan to use this property? Well, I plan to live there. What is the total funds you have for down payment? Well, we have $25,000 as we previously showed in our example before. So we're going to hit next. And do you have any outstanding debt? I'm going to assume we have 0 debt. No car loans, no credit cards, no nothing. What is your employment status? I am employed. So I'm going to click employed. What is your gross annual household income before taxes? Before I said 106,000, I made a mistake on the screen capture and put in 105,000. So we're just going to roll forward with that. Believe me, $1,000 isn't going to do much damage. How would you rate your credit? I'm going to say that we have excellent credit. It's going to load up and bingo, we don't qualify for anything. You are pre-qualified to purchase a $397,947 house. That's $100,000 under what we see in the market today. As we can see, the total down payment needed and the default insurance there, but yeah, that's basically it. We only get a mortgage of $389,573. Well short of what we actually need. More than $100,000 short, actually. So there you go. We don't qualify.
So as you can see, there's 3 key differences from 20 years ago buying our first home to today in 2023 of trying to buy and qualify for your first home. So here's those 3 differences. Number 1, the stress test. OSFI has set the stress test at 2% above the contract rate. So for that same mortgage today in 2023, that going rate right now is roughly sitting at 5.89%. So we're going to use 5.89%. Now, mind you, that rate may have changed by the time you're watching this because markets do ebb and flow daily. So we're going to use 5.89 as that rate. 5.89 means we have to qualify at 7.89%. At 7.89%, a family with a household income of $106,000 today would not be able to qualify using minimum down payment. Reason number 2, home valuations. Like, homes cost so much more now. Now, back in 2003, it was a similar market. There was not a lot of properties around. We remember looking through a newspaper classified ads for houses for sale. And that's how we found our property. It was actually a private sale. So we found it in the fine print at the back of the classified ads in the real estate flyer that came out every week. But we even remember back then, there was a bit of an urgency to find a home. The market's always been on fire, especially here in Guelph, Ontario, which means there's always been a lack of supply. So the houses are so expensive these days, yeah, because of cheap money during the last 15 years, but also a lack of supply. There's just not enough homes on the market to fill up that demand. Reason number 3, wage growth. Let's face it, wages haven't followed with the economy over the last 20 years. I mean, if you're living on a minimum wage of $16 an hour, what can you afford? If both of you are working on a $16 an hour wage, you can't afford anything. Man, you can barely afford rent in Ontario. So those are the 3 key differences of 20 years ago to today. Interest rates plus stress tests being way higher than they were 20 years ago. Supply, just not enough housing on the market to ebb and flow with what rates are seeing versus what supply we have. There's just not enough homes available. And 3, wage growth. there's not been a substantial wage growth, especially for the entry-level market of wage earners. Here's something I want to leave you with. I'm actually hosting a first-time homebuyers webinar this coming Wednesday, free of charge. Just got to give your name and your email address. And in 1 hour, we're going to go over the frequently asked questions that I have seen over the last 13 years of my career as a mortgage broker. We're going to cover what it looks like to actually start that process and those key steps along the way. And at the end of that webinar, you'll have the opportunity to be able to book a free call with me if you'd like to go over your personal situation and get you better prepared. Because here's the key takeaway as well. I kind of think that rates are going to start to decrease in the spring of next year. Don't take it as gospel, but I do think that we are going to see downward pressure on rates as we go into the spring market of next year. And you want to be prepared if you are a first-time buyer. We were definitely not prepared 20 years ago when we took this journey. We had no idea what we were doing. I want to better prepare you for that journey this coming spring. So look for that link either in the bio or in the comments or the description below. And I really hope I get to see you on that webinar next Wednesday. Thanks for watching.